Hello, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening. Hopefully I'm on the right broadband for this. Is it coming through loud and clear? Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. Only just got back. How are you all? You're good. Hi, Lynn. Hi, Steph. Welcome to Thirsty Thursday, an opportunity for us all to touch base with each other. Whether you have, whether you're an addict, an alcoholic, or whether you struggle with your drinking, or whether you're partaking in, whether you're partaking, whether you have, whether you're an addict, an alcoholic. Oh, hang on a minute. Just one sec. Struggle with your drinking. 1 second. Whether you're partaking, whether you have. Just 1 second. Are you getting reverb? Just 1 second. Feels like you're getting reverb. Hang on, let me turn that down. Echo? Has the echo gone? Is the echo still there? Is it all echoey? Shall I start again? Maybe I need to start again. Tell me if it's all echoey. Is it still echoey? You still getting an echo? Gone now. Has it gone? All good. Can you hear me okay? Thanks, Michelle. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Rather stupidly, these new phones, they keep playing something on YouTube at the top of your screen. Thank you very much. Morning. Good evening, Carla Martin. I hate alcohol and lucky it is not something I've ever been attracted to, but it's food with me. Some of the wrong things, all good. Thank you, Mark. Well, it's interesting you should say that because, you know, Nadia is doing a lot of chats about body image. Food comes into that, obviously. And food is a huge part of alcoholism and addiction. The food aspect rears its head in nearly all addictive kind of personalities, doesn't it? And in many ways, food can be one of the most, if not the most insidious sort of addiction or compulsive condition to be able to crack, because of course you can't have total abstinence. I mean, I think that's one of the things I think I feel quite relieved about with alcohol and drugs. And for me, cocaine was a big part of my story. But you know, you can have total abstinence. You know if you're not drinking, you know if you're not, but you've got to eat. You've got to eat. And also, in fact, actually, the other, you know, that's why Codependence Anonymous, just a little kind of brief chat about all the various different addictions. Addictions can come in many different ways. Sex addiction, codependency, love addiction, whatever you want to call it. That's incredibly difficult because, of course, you've got to have relationships with people. So you can't have total abstinence. You know, so that's why, you know, in many regards, food issues have, I'm not suggesting for a minute there's a hierarchy of complications or that one is any easier to deal with or worse than the other. It's totally dependent and unique to the person. But you're right. When I see that, you have all of my compassion and all of my thoughts. Now, I popped into the title here. This is one of those classic ones, of classic kind of chats where it's like sometimes you go to an AA, you know, sometimes you'll go to an AA meeting, or sometimes, oh, am I out of sync now? Okay, let me just do this. Just 1 sec. Oh, okay, all good. Okay, maybe you're out of sync, Siobhan, because you're earlier, maybe. But that should have done it. I've just done a reboot of the Wi-Fi. What was I saying? Sometimes you can go to an AA meeting, or someone can ask you what's wrong, and you can kind of know that you've got a bit of a scratch. You've got an itch. Let's call it the itch. I've got an itch sitch, and I've had an itch pretty much since 6 p.m. today. I had an itch, and that itch would mean that if I went to an AA meeting, let's sort of treat this as almost like our self-help group. I didn't have a Scooby-Doo what on earth I was going to open my mouth and say, or speak about, or talk about. And sometimes those are the most important moments to open your mouth, or just go with what comes out of your mouth. And so, for some reason, I popped into the title, How and Why Alcoholism and Addiction Leads to Risky Behaviour and Dangerous Actions. I think most people who have an addictive personality, most people who are addicts, have this kind of flirtatious desire to take things to the very edge. Would you agree? Is that something that you feel that we're flirting with disaster? We are sort of hedonists, but But sometimes you can be a hedonist and you want to take things to the very edge, but you're also a coward and you're scared of it all. So you do it. So you take things right to the edge of what you can do, and you just keep pushing the envelope. And I think really, why risky behavior? Why danger? Because I think baked into every time I feel like I'm struggling, and when I say I'm struggling with my sobriety, I don't mean, oh, I'm going to pick up a drink necessarily. But everyone struggles with their mental health, and everyone struggles with managing how they're feeling, and everyone reaches to something to control it. Someone at the very beginning of this, I noticed, someone said they'd done a aviation course and they were having a vodka, but they wouldn't have much more. So, it's kind of like, your feelings mean that you look for something to plug you in, or to plug the gap, or do something like that. And then I started to think, well, why does that then extend to almost destroying your life, or driving the car quite literally into a wall? Al Zoran, how are you, matey? I hope you're well. Hope to see you soon, by the way. Yeah, I struggle with alcoholism badly. Been drinking all my adult life. It's the one thing I can't control. And do you find that you're part of the appeal is it removes all, I mean, the removal of inhibitions is why risky behavior is hand in hand with addiction and alcoholism. And in a weird way, that's not to say that, well, obviously there's long-term risky behavior and dangerous behavior around food, but in a weird way, if you binge or if you don't eat in a night, you're not necessarily in that one night going to potentially do damage to yourself and damage to others. And one of the things that you do when you go into rehab is you look at all of the evidence in your life that you've lost control, or that your relationship with alcohol or drugs is beyond the pale. And I just jotted down a list of things that I could just remember off the top of my head, that were dangerous from a really early age. Al Zoran, I can escape everything, but that is its own risk in the long term. Absolutely. Charlotte Graceable, hi Mark, gave up booze September 2020 after years of daily abuse. Well done, you. Well done. Rachel, I am a people pleaser, but find it very difficult to do anything for me. Self-loathing, I guess. Don't know why. Steph Schultz, addictive personalities can have addiction to anything, exercise, people, anything they start an interest in. But I'm just kind of curious about this. You're absolutely right, all of you, but I'm just kind of curious about what is it? What is it that makes us so... Here's my list. So one of the first things I did in my life, well, I didn't do it. I didn't set out to do it. But one of the first times I got really, really drunk, and I was 15, 16, it was a summer job, or 16, 17, something like that. And my tube overshot the station. I think I may have shared this before. I got off at Northolt, and instead of this was back in 1986. So you couldn't get a cab in Northolt. You're joking, at midnight. So the idea would have been you'd have to walk home. I didn't have to walk home. Didn't have maps. Didn't have Google Maps. Didn't have an A to Z. So what did I do? I got off the train at Northolt, last tube, and I walked along the centre of the tube tracks, staggering, and they were live tracks. So as I staggered and my feet fell in, that for me is the first moment I remember not thinking about the potential consequences of what I was doing. This was dangerous to me. It wasn't just dangerous to me, it was dangerous to one of the tube drivers who went scooting past me. And I remember feeling the breeze of it as it went past me. Absolute moron. Moron, DT. Our neurons are arranged in a certain way. We are more prone to addiction. Trina Cotton, it's good you've realised now, Julian recognised it. Julia, I'm glad Nadia mentioned disordered eating, has made me realise a lot about my eating habits. Yeah, no, Nadia's very good on all that. We're going to do a sort of joint header on disordered eating too. So that was a first sign. Often when people look at the portrait of their lives and they go, when was I an alcoholic? Was there a trigger? Was there a moment? Or was I always this batshit crazy lunatic? And, that kind, 9 lives, absolutely, Steph Schultz, that kind of moment was proof that I was doing dangerous things. And as I'm sat here telling you this, that same summer, I remember not having ever hurt anyone, punching a man in the face because he was rude to my girlfriend in a pub. And I can remember the pub. It was a small pub off Carnaby Street. I was barred from a pub at the age of 16 in Carnaby Street. Let's just, let's just start to add these things up. I've nearly killed myself on the underground. This is all in the first summer of love, almost, the first summer of drinking. That wasn't my personality. I wouldn't do that. But someone had been leery. I had drunk too much that night. And I thought, in that stupid, egotistical, biggest piece of shit at the centre of the universe idea that I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, I thought, I'm the big I am. This is what you need to do. And got barred. I remember his head bouncing off the back of the window. I mean, he was rude, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I just kind of went for argy-bargy. Dangerous behaviour, risky behaviour, dangerous actions. And what's baked into these dangerous actions, the reason I'm talking about this is danger and riskiness can come in the most overt ways, in the most obvious ways, and they can come in the most sort of indirect ways, I would argue. So let me run through. So literal physical harm. Walking along the tube lines at 15, 16. Much later in my life, hanging out of helicopters on ropes. We were filming. That's the reason I was hanging out of a helicopter. But off my head. Totally off my head. On coke, on not Coca-Cola, on all sorts of stuff. Putting myself in vulnerable positions. I'm going to share this with you. I once ate crack cocaine because I bought it on the street in Soho and I needed to get back into the bar. My whole head went numb. What? Drink driving. I drank and I drove. Now, I was prosecuted for that, and that was my rock bottom. And these are the kind of things, and the reason why I suppose now I'm beginning. Oh, well, okay, Tim. I'm beginning to realise why I'm wanting to talk about this, because actually one of the majorly important parts of getting sober, getting clean, or as we were talking about the last time we were talking was, hello, my name's Mark and I have a problem with drink. So when I was first in rehab, do you remember we were talking about how I struggled with the idea of calling myself an alcoholic? I just couldn't do it. Denial. What does it take? What will it take for you to stop and go, shitting hell, I've got a problem? And, you can look at all these things and it's weird. The most obvious moment for me, the catalyst moment, the first proper rock bottom that I hit was the drink driving thing, because it had so many ramifications and implications for so many things. Obviously, there was the irresponsibility of doing it. Awful. Absolutely awful. I bend my head, I bend myself, and I say, this is just awful. So there's that. Fortunately, I was pulled, nothing untoward had happened. But I was charged, rightly. I lost my license. It impacted my access arrangements in terms of being able to see my children. It impacted, fortunately, the BBC were very helpful. And they were just kind of like, they supported me, but it could have impacted work too. And so, it's just, that was a catalyst moment, dangerous behaviour. But if you then chart all the way back before that moment, there were all those other little signs that cumulatively pointed towards the fact that I couldn't control alcohol. I wasn't in control of drink. It was in control of me. If I indulged in it too much. So that's the most overt form. Now, when I was done for drink driving, that was the first moment I made a decision to try and stop. And I went to an AA meeting. I went to my first AA meeting and I walked into an AA meeting and I was drunk. I had to go and have a pint before I went in because I was so nervous about going in. And in retrospect, I realised that a lot of the people in that room could probably smell the alcohol on me. And that's dangerous. That's not a good thing to do, is it, Tim? Anyone else in a 12-step program recovery fellowship will know that, coming in and being high is dangerous because it's dangerous to everyone in there. It's not that they won't, accommodate you or make suggestions or encourage you to come back, but it's dangerous. It's triggering, quite literally triggering for everyone in the room. And so that was dangerous behaviour. I travelled to foreign countries entirely drunk. I once went to America and was so off my head for 6 days. I don't remember being there, coming back, or I have blurry moments of it. Of course, I remember enough to have, what? I mean, I do remember. I've got photographs of it, but it was a fog of total bemusement. Other times you have the histrionics. You get the histrionics of the alcoholics. You drink too much. And this thing, which is a majorly important thing, which we could probably do a whole conversation about, which is poor me. Self-pity, the self-pity of the addict. If anyone here knows an addict, is recovered from addiction, there is no self-pity like the self-pity of an addict. And dangerous behavior, risky behavior, dangerous actions, things that endanger not just yourself physically, but others, such as with drink driving, but also endanger yourself physically in terms of picking a fight and others, which happens probably the most common form of physical kind of consequence, isn't it, of mass drinking. Look at football, fans and what have you. There's always violence, bit of alcohol, everyone starts to fight. Go abroad, there's always a bit of a fight. No, this shit always kicks off around alcohol, doesn't it? But then, of course, there's all the other dangerous things that you do to yourself, like, sleeping around, being flirtatious, those, and that is something that doesn't really get talked about massively in the fellowship and AA meetings. But for me, the most dangerous thing you can do as an addict, or in a sense, what one is constantly doing, which is dangerous as an addict, is you're forever clipping and cutting and bending your moral compass. You are forever, essentially, I hate to use the phrase, the phrase that they say, well, I'm afraid I'm incredibly disappointed. You've let the team down. You've let yourself down. It's when you let yourself down again and again. And what starts to happen is you let yourself down, you do it once, so you do it again, and then you do it again. And then slowly your bar for morality starts to kind of come down. And it's not necessarily that you're immoral, it's just that you don't care about the consequences to yourself. And then if terrible things happen to you, your self-pity kicks in and you're like, oh yeah, but it was for this reason, it's for that reason, it's for this reason, etc., etc., etc. So dangerous behavior, risky behavior, it is what defines hitting a rock bottom. And what does a rock bottom mean? A rock bottom means you stand to lose everything relative to what is important to you and is close to your heart. So that could be work, it could be family, it could be your home, it could be your relationship. And when I say relationship, it could be your relationship with a lover, or it could be your relationship with your children or with your family. Yeah, so your moral compass goes out the window. And that's the most dangerous moment, and I think back to, what was going through my head when I rushed out. Let me paint the picture for you when I ate a lump of crack cocaine. What desperate state was I in to do that? So here you go. We're out. I'm with a bunch of people. I've got crutches. Why have I got crutches? Because I've aggravated an injury I've got, my cruciate ligament, from being too drunk the week before. So I'm on I've got crutches. I mean, look at, how many more signs do I need? Repeated leg injury through too much excessive drinking. So on crutches, in a bar, on Frith Street, Dean Street, Frith Street. I've drunk enough. We can drink more. We're going somewhere else. But I want to go out and score some drugs. And when I go out to score some drugs, another drug dealer intercepts me. So I've already scored drugs for all of us, for someone, off someone else. Then I see someone on the street selling something and I buy it off him. And what do? I go into a panic. I think, oh, I'm not going to be able to get back in. They're going to search me. So I swallow it. My entire head went numb. I mean, this is kind of, I can be humorous about it now, but my entire head went numb. Finding yourself in dangerous scenarios or environments. Fortunately, I never did anything like inject drugs or anything like that. But I found myself in situations and in locations and in interiors where that was going on. And it was, the only thing that saved me was actually, bizarrely, enough hypochondria and fear of needles to stop me from, going that much further. Mark, were you the worst out of your friends at bad influence or influenced? How were the dynamics? That's a good question. I was the person everyone knew was more extreme, but the language used was he's a party animal. You don't know where things are going to end up on a night out with him. I would never force stuff on anyone else. That was not I wasn't interested in that. But what I wanted was, if I had it, I wanted to share it. I was always one of those druggies that would share their gear all the time. Wanting acceptance, wanting to belong, not really wanting to impress, but wanting to keep company going. That's the thing, loneliness. I think, for many of the years when I was at my worst, obviously, as I've said here, the addiction was there. It was, as they beautifully put it in the fellowship or in recovery speak, the addiction was busy doing press ups in the room outside that door. My addiction is still out there right now doing press ups, which is why doing a chat like this really helps me, because it reminds me and I remind myself. And that's why an AA meeting helps to remind me, or being very fortunately around people who have an understanding of what addiction is about. My illness is forever doing press-ups. As I said last week, remember, the illness of addiction, one of the defining diagnostic aspects of addiction is that it's a disease that tells you you don't have a disease in here. That's it. That's how it's cunning and baffling, isn't it, Tim? It's pretending that you haven't got of course you haven't. Not on this occasion. Yeah, you pushed the boat out a bit too far this time. But you haven't really got a problem. Well, at what point have I got a problem? So in terms of the group dynamic, I was always, I wanted to facilitate, but I didn't want to take anyone down with me. I met people and I've been around people who for sure wanted to take me down. I know that. And I would be more than willing to go there. But the problem was this, and I think I've said it before elsewhere, whereas most people would go out once or twice in a week with one group or two groups, I would find a group for every night. My fear, my fundamental fear was being alone in those wilderness years, between, sadly, breaking up with, my first family and getting to rehab. It was fear. It was fear of being alone defined everything and most of my drinking. And I think this is an important thing to say. Hi, Lee Durrant. So much, hi Siobhan, so much of one's drinking journey, the reason you drink or the reason you take drugs isn't always for the same reason. You can attach it to anything. And one of the most challenging things to people involved to people in sobriety is grief, is the idea that, I remember hearing someone talk about the fact that they've been sober for 15, 16, 17 years. Their mother died. They were tragically upset about it, understandably. And this person's telling this story. They were sober again, and they were telling this retrospectively. And they said they remember now, they could look back now and they could see that even at the moment of the trauma and sadness of their mother dying, their first thought was, I can justify having a drink now. Wow. It's like, when else could you? And one of the biggest challenges to anyone with an addiction of any form is riding through a moment like that, not allowing yourself to fall into thought. Now, don't get me wrong. When I say that doesn't mean that if you fail, then, it's all over. No, of course not. But the aim is to not fail. If you know you've got a drinking problem, if you know you've got an addiction problem, the aim is to not fail. So why are we talking about all this stuff? Why are we talking about risky behavior, dangerous behavior, risky actions, and all this kind of stuff? Because we think that they have to be really obvious, dramatic things. I mean, I've got another one here. Threatening to throw myself off scaffolding. Suicide. Suicide is the most common, dangerous consequence and the riskiest of acts that can happen whilst drunk. You're obviously not in your, the freedom of your sobriety. It doesn't mean that in sobriety you're not necessarily feeling these things or even having what they call suicide ideation. But alcohol and drugs, in a sense, sort of take, like if you're in, when you're 10-pin bowling and if you're shit at it, you put the tracks up down the side so that your ball will definitely hit something. If you're feeling, if you're inclined towards depression, suicidal thoughts, and you drink or take drugs, you may as well take those guards down, and you're going to be bowling on a sort of alley, and probably unlikely to hit the target. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're upping the ante. And suicide when drinking. Deaths and dangerous behavior around drinking suicide can happen in the most indirect fashion. I sometimes hear stories of people who have died of, they say, natural causes, but you know that what's driven them to that natural cause is excessive drug or drink use that over time has destroyed their body. And so it won't be recorded as a sort of, an alcoholic death, but it is. So dangerous behavior. So, rock bottoms and how does this feed into what we were talking about the last time I was with you? We were talking about the idea of how I struggled. Yeah, exactly, Lee Doran. Alcohol and drugs make it easier to harm yourself, gives you the courage, been there so many times. It numbs you to the consequences. You are numb to the consequences. You are anesthetized against, I would say, almost the reality of what it is you're doing. And that's why it's so tragic and difficult, and why it is so incumbent on anyone who feels that, their life is a series of all these moments. You do everything you can to get sober, ask for help, and be helped doing it. There's no shame in asking for help. There is no shame in reaching out for help. Dawny Harvey, evening Dawny. My friend tried to jump off a bridge. The only reason she didn't was because I managed to grab the belt on her jeans. Literally, that was the difference between life and death. She was high on ecstasy. Yeah, you can get sort of, you can get, what's it called when you feel sort of almost so everything's idyllic, ecstatic. You can be ecstatic, literally, on ecstasy, of course, ecstatic with everything. But actually, you're not going to feel the consequences of if you throw yourself off that building. That's why, again, when people do this sort of kind of strange league table of, well, hallucinogens and acid and, hang on a minute, euphoric. Thank you very much, Killy Wendell. You can feel euphoric, but if you can feel hallucinatory, you don't even know what the consequences are. I've tried everything, bar injecting stuff. And, acid, LSD, all that stuff. Oh my God, it was a whole different kind of hell and horror. And in fact, there's another example. Dangerous behavior. Taking 6 acid tabs all on the same night. For years thinking, well, and I was with someone who'd kind of led me up the garden path a little bit in terms of how much I was taking, but took it. I took it. No one, at the end of the day, one has to always be responsible. I did it. Oh my God. Paranoid for days. I thought the IRA were following me. I mean, what? Dangerous behavior. Donna Little, I've been there. Couldn't find an answer. The only thing that stopped me was the love for my first child. Thank God. Donna Little. And that, many people would say, you can't do it for your children. You can't do it for your wife. I know the traitors is about to start. You can't do it for anyone other than yourself. I disagree. I've got to a point in my life where I have done it all along for all of those people I love and care for. I want to remove the potential trauma of my death and my demise in whatever ugly, messy fashion it could have happened away from their stories. I didn't want the narratives or stories of those people who loved me to have to incorporate their father or their son or their partner destroying their lives in the most hideous fashion. Where I'm at now, and I think this is an important point to say in terms of doing it for your children or doing it for yourself, is I'm now at the point where I'm turning the corner, and I'm turning the way I'm facing towards trying to do it more for me and not being so brutal with myself. So just I would, what I'd say to everyone tonight. Oh, Alzaran, stay strong, matey Flip. And when I'm next in the area, we will grab a coffee if all the posh people let you. But here's the thing, I just go away and make a list. Literally, write a list of everything you can remember in your life where the consequence there, but for the grace of God, your higher power. And we're going to talk about what that means eventually. I don't believe in God, don't worry, I'm not getting on like that. But if you have taken this to the very edge, like I did, and you haven't died, and you haven't killed someone, you may have hurt people, but that's something else facing your family. We'll talk about that. You have a higher power looking out for you. If you are here now and you've gone to the very edge of things, Lee, I know you've shared a lot about this kind of thing. I don't want to talk about anyone else in the room, but I know there's a couple of other people who have had really, really dark times. guess what? Guess what's beautiful about the fact that you're here? Some kind of higher power, something bigger than you, bigger than all of us, has been looking out for you. Call it what you want, guardian angel, call it a tree, call it an oak tree, call it the squirrel on nuts, call it the squirrel on crack, whatever you want to call it. Something somewhere has held you and pulled you away from that. And I think you can probably, if you've all had problems with drinking, you will all have moments where you'll look at where things were going and go, oh my God, what if the what ifs? And we can do a whole chat about that too. Anyway, guys, most importantly right now, it's the traitor. I hope that's been of some use. It's certainly been a help to me. I've had a tumble dryer of emotions in my chest and in my head, reading your comments, you reflecting back to me. Hopefully some of what I've said in this garbled fashion has been of use to you. Thank you. Thank you. And as I really mean it, if you've gone to the edge of things, but you're here, if you believe that drink has nearly killed you and you're here, or drugs and you're here, someone somewhere, something is saying to you, you're special. It's not going to happen. Okay? All right, guys. Lots of love. See you on the morrow and enjoy the traitors. Is it the final? No, it's the final tomorrow. Bye.